training book.
He
Who's
looks,
oh, no,
his
sure.
head
Just
looks
approach.
similar.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dressed
Oh, wait, the-
similarly.
Looks like,
hands are different.
I mean, it does make you think of a t-shirt.
The hands are different, I think. I
Oh,
think it's
yeah,
on- I think
yeah,
it's on
and he's
his.
got the
And
flaming
he's-
pen
yeah.
and
I think I
the
missed that
Russian
part.
paramita.
I mean, it's kind of similar.
I thought it was Gampoka.
No, this is Shankpa.
Yeah, okay.
That's the Shankpa lineage.
Right, there's film in the big camera. What?
So I heard all kinds of little threads of conversations and things about meditation. Want to continue with some of that thread? The eyes in meditation.
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to, but I
Good.
you know, I guess it was giving me quite a bit, well, maybe not quite a bit, but just a little anxiety, this sort of extended inability to see again after I would meditate with my eyes open.
Yeah.
And I guess by that I mean like maybe 10 minutes.
Yep.
And so I thought maybe something was wrong. I hadn't heard of other people complain of that experience. So I went back to meditating with my eyes closed, and I'm much more likely to fall asleep or have these strange, only in meditation moments that are a lot like when you first fall asleep and go instantly into a dream state and then come back out of it. And that's kind of an interesting experience to try and follow and be mindful about.
Yeah. I have at times had also those experiences with eyes not wanting to refocus, usually after extended meditation sessions. I tried various things on one-year retreat. One of them was I thumbtacked this thread to the ceiling right in front of me. So I had a thread kind of hanging down in space, and that's what I rested my eyes on. Because otherwise, kind of just the soft focus did kind of...
Stay soft.
yeah, it stayed soft. So that's one thing. One of the vision is such a dominant part of our experience that it is actually a significant challenge what to do with the eyes, and you'll hear various recommendations, but the soft focus is one. I don't think any of them are kind of universally do everything for everybody. That there'll be kind of things, but just relating to our field of vision as a field of vision is one way to not get too wrapped up in the kind of I'm looking at that, just holding a sense that this is the field of vision that comes along with this seeing experience. You can actually explore the field of vision just as a way of kind of along the lines of 4 foundations of mindfulness of the body. So we actually rest the attention on different sense fields, and then it's actually very interesting seeing what it is that we actually see when we stop telling ourselves stories about it and actually really notice what is this thing. And it's pretty easy to figure out that actually a lot of what we think we see is this narrative, this cobbled together memory, and that if we actually were just resting our eyes in one spot and the lights came on in an unfamiliar room that we actually would not be able to tell what it was that was in the periphery of our vision. Even though once we've been in a room, we kind of look around, we rest our eyes in one spot and think, oh, there's that throny thing over here with this picture on it. Even though I can't really quite see it, it's like I think I'm seeing this thing, but it's actually just kind of a vague reminder. That's all that's actually there. So it's a good thing to just, part of getting to know our experience is just getting to know exactly what that experience is, just really meeting it. And it does help to be able to disengage from the stories about what it is that's in my field of vision.
I guess a quick follow-up on that, or what's the general guidance on blinking? Because, one of the other big deterrents to keeping my eyes open is that I feel like my eyes dry out and they get really sensitive, and I feel like I get very distracted by my eyes, so I'm just like, just close them so I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Don't worry about blinking. But this is kind of, it's almost unkind advice. This is like saying, do not control your breath. Do not think of an elephant. It's you have to once we are saying, oh, I'm going to meditate with my eyes open, then it's like, well, when am I going to blink? Oh, I'm blinking. That's a deal. I wasn't thinking. Oh, I'm blinking a lot. Oh, wow. All these things are like, yeah, okay, yeah. You kind of have to sort of go through it, but I've also had, the older we get, the more the dry eye thing happens. And I've gone through phases where it was a significant thing, but then just close my eyes for a while and do something. But it's being able to accommodate those kinds of things within our practice. That's because it's easy, we can be cursed by having a very convenient and very stable practice that works exactly one way. It seems really good, but it's only like that. And then when something happens, I was fine. I was so comfortable in every way, and then my knee started hurting, and now my practice is shot. Or I was fine, but my eyes started to dry out, and now my practice is gone. So, kind of accommodating the kind of this sense of inconvenience and instability is actually it's a primary kind of element in practice, because something will always come up if we practice long enough. Something will come up. So being able to kind of roll with all of that, and roll with it. It's so inconvenient. I have to consciously kind of work out some strategy for blinking. Otherwise, my eyes just dry up and fall out. How terrible. Well, no, it's not terrible. It just happened. So relating to the whole arc of that, and the more that we have cultivated the aspect of being able to attend to experience arising, then all of that can become kind of interesting. Oh, and if we're really there with it unfolding, then the sense of inconvenience and the sense of irritation, we actually see how these things actually kind of start to unfold and what's going on with them. So it's actually and it's like, okay, cool, my eyes are drying up. Let's see what this is about.
And now I'm irritated about it. And I see that, and now that's gone. Now I don't care. Now I'm thinking of my toe, and now the dog is barking, and it's that that metaphor Lama Michael was using today is you're sitting by a river, and just be like you're sitting by a river, so you don't say, "No, that branch, no, that shouldn't be there."
Throw the beer can in.
Yeah, that river's going, oh, no, wrong speed, you know. We don't do that when we sit by a river. And that's the river of thoughts. The question I had after we worked with that today is that sense of I am sitting by a river of thoughts. And I remembered there was a lot of good discussion today, so I didn't get this piece out there. But Thich Nhat Hanh, one time, I don't know if I heard it on tape, I think it was on tape from him. He was talking about the river of all the rivers. The self is, the body is a river. It's just moving kind of slower. All your blood and everything moving around, your molecules. You want to get that part in there too. So it's not a very solid I watching some kind of river of thoughts that isn't I, you know. So he would think like the body is a river, the sensations another river, the thoughts of maybe a quick river, maybe slow, emotions another river, another part of the river. So pretty soon you doing that, you get the sense of the whole thing moving, not this solid I watching.
Rivers watching rivers.
Huh?
Rivers watching rivers.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's no watcher, you know. But yeah, I found that very helpful. And then he said, oh yeah, I remember what he said. And he said, whatever your name is. And every part of that is not Zopa. So you're going, I'm not my thoughts, not my emotions. This is more analytical for a little bit of meditation. And then you let go of the whole thing and just be with the flow. But I am not my thoughts. I mean, if you just tried to put my thoughts out there, that's not me. Because they're just shifting all over. I'm not my body. I'm more than that, some sort of combo. But I'm not my emotions. They're shifting all the time. What part of this am I? You know? And then you just let go and be in that flow. Because it's all shifting constantly. Someone today talked about something where the whole thing is moving. There's like an earthquake or something, I don't know, something. But trying to get past the sense that there's an I watching these thoughts, which is helpful. But then we can solidify that too.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I don't try so hard to get
To
beyond.
undo it? Yeah.
I don't make a real effort at going at it that
Well, because it's
hard way.
analytical. Yeah.
It's more just incorporating anything that comes up that I put kind of on the outside. It's either on the outside or putting it on the outside or some special corner. That's another dynamic of experience unfolding.
So you just hold that, oh, I see, there's an I.
There's some kind of
Separation
impression.
or
There's
something.
some kind of impression.
And you just notice that.
Just
Let it go.
resting on that impression. How is that?
Yeah, and that goes too.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, shamatha is supposed to be the most, whatever, advanced or stages of shamatha, we actually don't have an I and other experience anymore. So that's where it's going, but by thinking about it, I don't think we can create that.
Yeah.
You know, we can't just say, well, I know there's not an I separate from my thoughts, but that doesn't make it go
that's
away.
not the
So
experience.
I think the thing is to just, whatever the instruction is, if we're looking at things as a river, look as a river and don't worry about thinking about the I that might be observing that. We'll experience it, but there might be moments that actually we maybe even lose that sense of that eye. And so just being open to whatever happens with that, I think is probably a good way to proceed rather than
It's
trying to make
interesting
it be
because
this way or that way.
It's, well, it's the long old thing between, you know, a conceptual approach as
Mhm.
being somewhat useful and the just total experiential approach. And it's just a long discussion.
I mean, I think at
And
a
they're both
certain,
quite
at a certain
valued.
point, that might be a great, and you
Yeah.
know, that may be a great door to go through, but I guess, I think it probably would rely on having done the other thing for a long time, or some time.
Yeah, and some teachers say no. They say you
No.
get you get that conceptual set of thoughts so you can have something to hang on to, and then you let go.
It's,
And
but it's still,
then
it's a
others
different, it's
say-
a different meditation
Yes,
instruction
Yeah,
than
yeah, it is.
just look
And
at the river.
then others say, just stick with the experience because all that conceptual will just, and all I can do, having been trained in both now, is go back and forth and see what works. And I find them
Okay.
both quite
Yeah.
useful at different moments, different sessions.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I don't
I'm
disagree with
sitting
that.
there, experiencing the river, but it's more like a gushing waterfall. Then it's quite helpful to just, for me, to drop into some conceptual something for a while. And then go, oh, okay, I've got I see it now. Then let go. And everybody's gonna be different, you know. But cogs are all about experience, and geloops are way about, you know, get the concepts right first. Because you'll just sit in the cave and you won't know what you're supposed to even be doing.
I feel like even things like
Nobody's right or wrong.
I think there can also I think there's really valuable conceptual practices that aren't necessarily analytical in nature. Like I guess the first example that comes to mind is like Tonglen or loving kindness or things like that.
Those are analysis.
I guess I never really thought of them that way.
I-
Well, the four thoughts that turn the mind and the four immeasurables are different
They're
than sort of
conceptual.
like, yeah, they're,
But I don't think of them as like deconstructive, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. They're not deconstructive, but they're conceptual practices. They're contemplative.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of equating analytical and deconstruction.
We were about to
discursive.
discursive. We were
Um,
about
They're all conceptual, all discursive, whether you call them deconstructive or constructive. They're, Buddhism doesn't generally make that
Just kind of-
But
difference.
when you
But
use
I
the
would
word.
agree,
Western
it's a different
philosophy
kind of
does.
contemplating than I usually do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Western philosophy would make that difference.
But Zopa,
Yeah.
when you use the term analytical,
Yeah,
would you distinguish that from conceptual?
same,
Interesting.
Ah,
same,
yeah, so
yeah,
they're-
same, yeah,
In English, they are
Yeah.
different.
yeah.
I'm with you.
We would say there's just two big boxes,
They don't worry about things about that small.
conceptual and then just the just pure shamatha. What was that?
So there's not-
John was about to.
I had a couple thoughts. Just one is that it seems to me that if you get to those advanced stages of shamatha, which I have not, so I can only imagine what it would be like, where you're really stable in terms of your current observation of experience. It's hard to have your normal ego state if you're that
Yeah.
into the stream of experience, because you don't have time for the narrative, right? Because you're too busy, or the narrative becomes another thing you're observing instead
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
I way
Yeah.
that you usually experience. That's the way I imagine it would work. But all of this talk about the observer makes me wonder about the sort of Vipassana instruction that I feel like I've gotten at some point about turn awareness on itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is that the right pith instruction, or what is that supposed to? Is there any? I work with that sometimes. The only time I ever try Vipassana is like you know, it's really Tonglen, the whole production once a week, and I
Mhm.
do like 5 minutes of the 3 or 4 instructions that I've heard on the short retreats, but
Mhm.
is that the one? What is that supposed to look like?
What is it supposed to look like?
How
That's
do you start
actually
that?
kind of the wrong question. It's got more, how do you actually do it?
Right.
How do you actually implement it is more more to the point. And so turning the awareness back on itself, or allow awareness to be aware of awareness. That's one way to kind of key the instruction. To pose the question, what is the experience of having an experience? That's another way to kind of key the. But then, so that one, we have some kind of impression that there is an observer, and so without getting into any fuss about analyzing whether or not there is one or not, we can just turn the attention like so. If I've got one, it must be part of my experience. So therefore, what is that experience? And that then you have to just be prepared for something or nothing, or however the coin toss lands. You just have to be
That has
ready
been my experience so far. Some something and some nothing.
Yeah. But just keeping on doing it, and the more we can just kind of relax into the moment, the better it is. It's one of the most difficult things in all the insight Vipassana practices is needing to have some kind of, to make something out of it, needing to turn it into some kind of product, whatever it is. I mean, we won't even say answer, but just, we want something out of it. And that,
Even to be able to describe the experience.
yes, yeah, kind of like we need something for show and tell.
First we want to have it, then we want to show and tell it. And
Especially to ourselves.
Those both cause problems.
Yeah. So just being, it requires actually very deep kind of, deep is not exactly quite the right, but a deep relaxation, kind of an ability to really not go after a thing, and that's difficult. And the cultivation of the practice that Michael's been encouraging us as just to really be present with the unfolding of experience actually helps with that, because it tends to cut through. I mean, at a certain point, it's like put your attention on the breath. It's kind of convenient to go. I think I used the term. It's kind of a convenient deception to say the breath. Say, oh yes. But then it's when you really get down to, you're putting your attention on the experience. Then when you put your attention on the experience, it's no longer the experience in some kind of convenient singular way, and then it starts to unfold.
So the thing that Lama Michael shared when we were in one-year retreat about your question is first calm, abiding, as stable as you can get. You don't try for the insight until you have some, quiet river, not the
Sure.
waterfall. And then when it's not trying for it, but when you make the shift to awareness of the awareness or the perceiver, you do it like for a nanosecond, and as soon as all the conceptual stuff floods in, which is pretty fast, you go back right to shamatha. And that's just the practice until at some point we can have that longer moment, that longer insight moment. But it's very interesting watching how fast the concepts flood in. Even you get a little flash, you get very quiet, you make that effort, then you get maybe a flash of something. And then, boy, the concepts come, I got it, I didn't got it, oh no, what do I, and whoa, it's just like, man. And then back to the calm abiding, because what else can you do? But I like it too. This method seems to make some sort of easier access to the whole thing, and not such a sense of now I'm shifting from calm abiding to insight, and that Joe's got something.
Yeah, along those lines, I just wanted to ask you guys your thoughts, if you have any, about, there's kind of there seems to be sort of a whole kind of like a magazine cover kind of renaissance of mindfulness and meditation and mindfulness meditation, and how I'll see, like, mindfulness meditation is being discovered as the way to relax, and the way to heal, and the way to beat addictions, and like, I know it just sort of, like, I'm not sure what to think of all that stuff, and I often think, like, when I got into this like 10 years ago, I don't think I was thinking it was the way for me to relax, and I'd never really thought of it that way. And often, my shamatha, like, my river's pretty rough, sometimes, and it seems like it's kind of, unless I'm wrong, it's kind of getting co-opted a little bit by some things that I know, like we pretty much always do like little 5-minute, mindful breathing, meditative practices at work, with our sessions, or in our group therapy sessions and our DBT classes and such. And sometimes some patients will say to me, well, yeah, that's the best way to relax, or it's the best way to heal, meditation is great, right? Like the Buddhists know about that, and I'm just never quite sure what to think of all that. Like, is that all accurate, or is that like all inaccurate, or is it just like a Western view on it that's really kind of, compromised, or because there's not a lot of other understanding around what calm abiding is from the Eastern point of view. Anyway, I just wondered if you guys have thoughts on all this, because I'd kind of like to figure out what to think myself.
I think the bad news is that you won't be able to figure it out. Because there's such, I'd sort of all of the above and none of the above. There are ways. I read some of the things, and some things. Well, it's fine up to the point that they took it, but they're just not able to see relate to the rest of the context. But up to a certain point, it's kind of okay. But then there are other things where, like, well, the point of meditation is to kind of stop thoughts. I mean, you get all kinds of things that are out there, and people talking very kind of unctuously about how great this is, and that you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and it's about 70% BS. So there's a huge variety out there.
Of course, there's also a lot of clinical work that meditation yields actual, putting aside the spiritual path, that it really yields,
Which is why we
real life results.
That's why we are not only encouraged to do it at work, but we are actually authorized.
I mean,
because if it wasn't for those clinical studies, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
We actually literally are. So that's why it's like
even Alan Wallace, right, has studied this sort of neuroscientific, or that's what he came and talked to a bunch of lawyers. Yeah, sure. But I find it very interesting. So I came at it the other way, Joe. Like, I got into meditation, or was more interested in meditation than I was in Buddhism, before I found my way here. But I always find it kind of, I'm never quite sure how to figure out how I feel about when I get the teachings from, it's mostly from Michael that I think of them, that this shamatha thing is really just, it's the first step on the path. So you can actually get an enlightenment. It's really just a tool to become enlightened, which is very different than thinking of it as something that's going to help you in this life. That's not the
end
point.
in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's where some of the there's some Buddhists or and maybe some Buddhist teachers who seem to anyway, to look down on or say like that it's damaging in a way to have people thinking that this is the end in itself, and this is the purpose, is just to sort of make us all feel a little better or something, that we're, if that's causing us to give up on what it's really about, which is about attaining freedom from suffering, and that's a really big thing. But on the other hand, but I tend to go in the camp of seeing that any increased mindfulness and awareness that anybody has is going to help them do what they want to do, and help them be a little more aware of what's happening to others around them, and give us space to make changes in our mind, and like John was saying, I mean, the mindfulness-based stress reduction and those things have been shown to actually, help people with their temporal problems, but that also can only help. I mean, that can only help in other, well, maybe not only, somebody could, I guess, use increased mindfulness to do a better job of swindling people out of their money. But
Sure.
in general, I think it's a great thing that it's become more prevalent and widespread and accepted. But it is a thing that in our context here, to remember that it is, it's not the end, it's not the goal, like.
And what I was gonna to tag on to that, I think it's all of that, and then it's kind of helpful if people come and say, Buddhists know about this, and isn't this great? Just go back to their experience, like, how was it for you? It seemed like it really worked for you. And then if they want to go further, the one thing I've done is just say, that's possibly, or if you know what technique they're using, sometimes they're describing something and you're just going, I've never heard of it. But if it's within the realm, just say that's one thing Buddhists do, but it's not Buddhism. Just making so that they get some clarity, because one of the big confusions that's going on is people think mindfulness is Buddhism, like as though they're like that. That's confusion. That's a big confusion. And I don't know that there's any big danger in it, but if we get to have a conversation, we can just help with some clarity.
Yeah,
It's
the
a
main
technique.
the main thread it seems to be that it's a relaxation exercise.
Well, if they
That's
feel
sort of the
that
point,
way,
and that
it's
oh
okay.
my gosh, the Buddhists must be so wise, because this is a really good relaxation
We're so
exercise. And I have nervous anxiety, or I have PTSD, and then I do this thing, and I am a little calmer for a while. And that must be that those Buddhists, in China or wherever, they must know how to really relax, like smart people. And that's kind of the wisdom of Buddhism. And I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. Like, yay, you're on, I'm not sure what to say. Like, well, actually, that's not actually, I don't think that's, or yes, that's grand. Like you said, it seems to be helpful for them.
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily say, yeah, you got Buddhism.
Nailed it.
And I'm not even supposed to be, it's like, so it's, yeah. I'm
Just
not
say, I'm
sure.
really glad you feel more relaxed.
And that's what I say. That's exactly what I say.
And that's
I say,
just like
that's
the whole
awesome.
rest.
I always
If they want a book on Buddhism, well, that's a different story.
And when this is part of the thing that's tricky, is that you're in a professional capacity where certain things are part of what you're supposed to do and what you're allowed to do, and certain things are really not part of it. And it would be really not cool to be peddling Dharma to people when that's not what the job is about. So this is part of where it gets a little bit kind of problematic, because there are a lot of people that are in a similar situation as you, where they do have some Dharma background, yet that you can have a conversation up to a certain point, but not beyond a certain point. So that then there is a little kind of discontinuity in things, and figuring out what to say in situations that's helpful is always difficult. That's always problematic.
Which is why I asked you.
So trying to actually be helpful is not so easy. So then you throw on top of it some of these kind of the professional rubrics and things that you really need to abide by in order to make your service really be offered on a level playing field to everybody who comes. That's really important. But then trying to figure out what you can say beyond that, then you really have to rely on your personal experience and be kind of very clear about what your experience is. And say, yeah, it's great for relaxation, and depending on the circumstance, you can say, yeah, with a relaxed mind, you can see a lot more about yourself. And that opens to the kind of the potential for the insight piece, without being inaccurate or kind of pushy in a sectarian way.
Yeah, it seems like it's joining, it's catching up with yoga, kind of in the popular culture of, it's kind of like a secularized sort of pop version of it that we have, that I think is really good for people, probably, mostly, hopefully.
It is.
But it's as it spreads, it is a little bit perplexing for me to observe. And then sometimes I think as it spreads, more and more people, I think will say that have maybe never studied Buddhism or Hinduism or anything like that, and will say, oh yeah, so this is what meditation and yoga is about, right? Like you get really relaxed and your metabolism is better and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, it maybe is helping your relaxation and metabolism, but I'm not sure that's that's not what I was thinking about when I started.
That's why all Buddhists are thin.
And relaxed, very relaxed.
There's
Not.
part of what's on my mind is colored by an article that I read sometime in the last couple of months, which was a diatribe against mindfulness. There's huge reaction, and criticizing the mindfulness movement as overselling everything, which I think is fine, except that the critique was kind of profoundly inaccurate. Kind of saying, well, it's like this, but it's actually not. That's not what it. Even at kind of your basic, ordinary professional level of competence, saying this is what mindfulness practice is. It wasn't actually. It was about some straw meditator.
That wasn't a Buddhist person.
No, it wasn't a Buddhist person. It was somebody who's saying. But they were making all kinds of other interesting claims, like all this business about being present. Being present is a bunch of hooey, because what really makes us happy is all the stories we tell ourselves. So they were mixing some stuff, which would be like, well, that would be an interesting conversation to have with somebody. Just how happy are you? Do your stories make you when you don't have any happy stories to tell yourself? What next? So it would be actually an interesting conversation, but a lot of it, what really did reflect kind of problematic presentations of mindfulness, and then this person picking those things out and saying, see what a bunch of hooey it is.
Yeah, one of my vets, it might have been the same article, but one of my vets brought one of those articles in to class and said, maybe mindfulness, did you know about this? Mindfulness is actually super bad for us.
Oh.
And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh. And I actually don't think the writer understands mindfulness, is what I told them.
I remember seeing some articles about how bad sitting meditation is for you.
Yeah.
I agree.
That one I
Very
put more
good.
stock in. You actually have to make sure, if you're going to sit a lot, you actually have to really make sure that you get a lot more exercise than you would otherwise.
Yeah, but you know, the thing I love about Buddhism is it's always what the Buddha said about, he said, everything I said, you have to experiment, and then you know. You know. And if you experiment with your own life on the cushion and off, and it just doesn't work for you, throw it away. He said that. You know, test it like gold. It could be fool's gold. What I say could be fool's gold. You got to burn it, hammer it, test it out. Then you rely. So anybody writes something, anybody says something, fake news, you know, we gotta come right to our experience, on and off the cushion. That's, you know, in the mind training, it's of the two witnesses, trust the primary one. That's you. The two witnesses are you and others. Of the two witnesses, trust the primary one. You. You know your own experience. And nobody else can really tell you what your experience is.
Sometimes you can't trust your feelings, you know.
But those are emotions.
You can't trust them, but you can't trust other people to tell them what they are either. 'Cause they're
Right.
And
experiencing them.
and then you have to ask, what does trust your emotions mean?
Yeah.
What does that
Mhm.
mean? You're having them, you can trust that's
Right.
arising.
Right.
But you wouldn't make all your decisions based on that. Maybe you mean that.
I guess so.
They're not,
Yeah.
they're not a trustworthy basis to run your life on.
They're not reliable.
Like I hate him, and, you know, maybe I have an anger emotion, but I don't need to run my life based on it. I
Right.
can see it arose. Is that,
Yeah, no.
it's an interesting thing, trust your emotions. What does that mean? I'm not answering the question, just I would meditate on
Yeah.
it a little.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, trust my thoughts, trust my emotions, trust my intuition. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean don't do it, but I ask myself too when I say, oh, my intuition said this, and then I go, what is that exactly? You know,
Right.
and it's an interesting thing. I don't have an answer. It's an experience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a word answer.
Right.
Sometimes it's wrong, and sometimes it's spot on.
Right. Right.
One of the things about that aphorism is that it's like, oh dear. So it's like the if I'm going to rely on the primary witness, maybe I better tune up the witness.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because
Uh-huh.
I can't ultimately blame the failure somewhere else. I've been warned that I actually am responsible.
Right. Right.
And
And there is the other witness, which is the counsel of your friends and teachers.
Yeah, that's what I was
So-
going to
so
say. It's not
like there's of
Yeah,
the
that's not all.
two
It's not there's just
of the
two.
yeah
Right.
yeah of the two, whether it's
It doesn't
yourself
mean
or other
just make it up
counsel, you
yourself.
in the end you have to be responsible for it,
Right.
and that's where the ultimate test will come.
Yeah.
It's, I thought there are a number of things like that, like just even the way it's phrased in refuge. Until enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Until enlightenment. Well, what happens then?
Yeah.
Then
I no longer take
you
refuge.
are the source of refuge. That's actually that's why it's phrased like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually that's kind of the end piece of trust the primary witness. That's where that's going. So it kind of puts a lot on us and actually offers us kind of a pretty big space.
We become the sources of refuge, then we don't need to take refuge anymore. That's kind of delightful.
It's already there.
Yeah, you can get too clever about it, but
Yeah.
I know I can.
We can say clever things.
yes.
but Practice is better.
Well, there are a lot of things. You have there are no doubt some little gems that you can take along, try out. But just observing the experience unfolding is also something that's very good in between sessions. Because it's then you don't have you're conveniently deprived of the notion that meditation ought to look like something or feel like something. So you can just rest your attention on what's rising, see what it is. Particularly things that we don't usually pay attention to. We don't usually just pay attention to the experience of thoughts arising. We're usually so kind of wrapped up inside the thoughts that we don't actually notice it as an experience. But that nexus of thought emotion, and from a Dharma perspective, you don't really make that much of a distinction between the two. Just resting your attention on the thoughts arising is something we almost always have thoughts arising, so it's kind of convenient at any moment, and it's good to be, like you're saying, the practices that we do for a nanosecond, just kind of to flash on that. Flash, what is experience thinking? What is that experience? We often just get drawn into the ideas and whatnot and lost and lose track of the experience. But so it's something good to do over and over again. Things change. So we can dedicate our practice. Go ahead and ring the bell, Jill. You're all primed.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. Thanks.
Thank you all. It's nice to see you in the evening.
Yeah, it's nice to be in the evening.
Did you come last Sunday?